Very good. Thank you very much, Professor Schult. It's a great pleasure to be here. It's good that we talk in English, so no one can hear that I'm from Zurich. Here in Basel that's sometimes a topic. No, it's a great honor to be here talking a bit about the topic of beyond open data, data in the domain of federal statistics for research. Although I fully agree, of course, to this title. I even chosen it by myself. I must also confess that it is somewhat misleading, and this for several reasons. First of all, beyond open data is a bit of a misnomer, what I want to present today. As the Federal Statistical Office, Open Government Data Office precisely coordinates the implementation of the OGD strategy in Switzerland. So the aim of this strategy is to provide open and freely usable administrative data available to the public on the opendata.swiss portal. For me, however, open data is not just another task for the FSO. Rather, open government data are the actual backbone for unleashing the power of data. Especially in research and science, freely usable, machine-readable data is the easiest way for us to work together and generate new knowledge. We need to develop this, and the FSO is making an important contribution to this part, a lot more than we do that today. We have to make also the data visible and not only accessible, and we also have to help you by using this data. And this in the sense of the FAIR principles. Most of you know this principle, but just to remind you what is meant by this, data should be findable. That sounds pretty easy, just find the data. But one of the biggest problems we don't know what kind of data we have. Even though we talk about open data, big data, whatever data, but there is no catalog of all the data we have. So how can you find it? So just to say data have to be findable is not enough. You have to make them findable. Secondly, accessible. When you find it, it doesn't mean that you have access to it. Sometimes you have a legal basis that doesn't allow it. Sometimes you don't even have access because the technical possibilities are not here that you have access to it. So just to find it is fine, but then also to have access to it is the second part. And then you have two more. Interoperability sounds also very easy to do. It's incredibly difficult to do. Interoperability means that data can talk to each other, so technically, but it also means that you have a kind of an organizational interoperability, that it makes it possible to work together, that everybody who has data make it accessible and findable. But then also you need to have a certain law for it, that it is allowed to do it. And finally, of course, you need also the semantic interoperability. Sounds also easy. In fact, this is one of the most difficult part at all. Just to make an example, to be interoperable, if you have, let's take the marks, if you have a test at the university, if you have a 1 in Germany, it's quite good. If you have a 1 in Switzerland, let's have a talk about it. So the semantic interoperability means that you know what's in there. So that sounds easy, fair, the E for the Y for the interoperability, but in fact, to organize it the way that the standards are the same, that the nomenclatures are the same, that's not so an easy task. Because there is no one who has the right or the law to say it is like this and now everybody has to do it the same way. That's not the reality. So that's why interoperability, just to say we have to be interoperable, is actually not enough. Really to think about how to make them interoperable and reusable. That's the last of these 4 elements, that these variables that you maybe have collected somewhere are findable, accessible, interoperable, and reusable. So this is, especially for a researcher, one of the difficult tasks. I fully understand that for most researchers, it's much easier to collect their own data, make a sample from out of somewhat, and then you have your own data, and you know where you have stored it, and then when you have finalized the research, then no one asks again what to do with this data. But this is not what we talk about. We talk about that this data is, you can find it, you have access to it, it's interoperable, and it's also reusable. So, but since we will be followed by the presentation on the open data. I didn't want to spoil the fun for the next speaker. Jonas is here, so I don't want to talk too much about open data. That's more your turn. Coming back to my initial point, the title also is a bit misleading in that I would like to explain not only how you can get our data, but also what else we do for you. So today, and of course, we want to talk also a bit, or I want to talk also a bit about the future. So certainly, I want to talk about how you can find and use our data. But before that, I would like to take you on a short journey and explain what the Federal Statistical Office actually does today. Because I think, as you might know, we are doing statistics, but we do a lot more, and I want to talk a bit about that. And all I'm saying has a strong connection also to FAIR principle. You will see it. Maybe, first of all, we do statistics. This is actually our information product. This is what when you read the paper, you see the Federal Statistical Office has announced, for example, today, how many people died because of COVID. It's not the Federal Statistical Office saying that, but it's the doctors writing these things down and then sending it to us, and then we publish it. So this is where we feel fully responsible from A to Z for the whole value chain. What is the question we have to answer? Where do we get the data out for that? We're also responsible for the definition of the definitions. And then, of course, also then bring these results to your attention through media or through our website or through other ways that are possible. But there we feel ourselves fully responsible for this information project. An additional task is data management, or so-called data steward. The Board of Ministers declared that the Director General of the Statistical Office, what this is me, is the data steward of Switzerland. But what does that really mean? The Federal Council wanted to make data management in the public sector simpler, more efficient through the multiple use of data in a way. This is the application of the FAIR principle for administrative data and the output side. On the input side, the aim is that individuals and companies should only have to report certain information to the authorities once. So in a nutshell, this is actually the implementation of the once-only principle, which means you have to give your data once, and then the government should look how they treat the data in a way that you don't have to give your data once more. And that is not only for the people, but it's also for companies. But if you think a bit through this, then you come to the conclusion that actually the data itself should be harmonized at the spot where it occurs. So there where your data comes first, the first spot, it should be usable for everyone. So not that you transform it to somewhere and this one transform it to another place and so forth. And this is very difficult because no one has the right to tell you how you have to do it. In order to promote multiple use of data in the long run, the E14Y interoperability platform is quite a difficult word. The E14Y means that E, and then you have 14 letters between the Y, which means interoperability. So there it comes from. It's made by nerds. Don't ask me why this makes sense to make it like this. But I think nerds knows exactly what it is about. This interoperability platform has been available since June 2021. Who of you know that? That's, of course, Jonas knows it. And of course, someone knows it. But the rest, I think there are not so many knowing it. So you can go on the website, having a look at the packet. There are already quite a lot of data on it. In the future, all data collection of the federal administration, you really heard it right, all data collection of the federal administration shall be described here in a form that provides information on the existence and quality of the data held, so-called metadata. They are not the data themselves, because we will have some problems by data protection, but the description of your data, no one can have something against that. And in the description, it is also described, do you have access or not? And if it is allowed, if it is open, you should also have access. And then you can see there in the metadata where it is. In addition, a directory of electronic interfaces, so-called APIs, I think some of you know that, will facilitate access to the actual data. So that you don't have to search all metadata catalogs in whole Switzerland or also even by Amazon, but you have a place where you can see what kind of APIs are existing in Switzerland. cantons, communes, and private individuals can also use the I14Y IOP. If this works out well, the data of the public administration will be coded in a uniform standards for research in the future. Above all, however, the data will be visible, findable, and interoperable also for you, all in the spirit of the FAIR principle. So the thing is that in the future, if you want to do a research, you can look at this website and you can see, is there data there or not? And then you also can see elements of qualities, like what is the variable, where you can find it, do you have access to it? And the good message is, if you want to interconnect these data, for example, with personal data, you can ask the Federal Statistical Office to do that for you. Because we have a rule, we have a law that allows us to do this. Of course, all these newly described harmonized data will be exciting opportunities for science in the future. But the administration itself, and especially the public statistics, must be able to deal with this data and use new complementary methods for this. This brings us to another additional task of the FSO. As soon as the data is visible, accessible, reusable, and we can also interconnect them, then we are at the stage that we have to learn together. This is the point where the Conseil Fédéral decided to build a data science competence center within the Federal Statistical Office. Because they say, look, I mean, there are so many data around. Who helps the people by doing or solving problems, doing projects, things like that? So that's why I would say one of the main problems first, do we know what we have, is solved by the I14Y. You see what we have. And the second problem, do we know now how to deal with this data that we learn out of data, is solved, solved is a big word, but is approached by the Data Science Competence Center, FSO. It looks like a bit like that, so that you see there are several networks around, and we have the Data Science Competence Center helping people learning out of the data. So the idea is then, for example, in the administration, if someone has a problem who can be solved through data, then they can call us and ask, has someone done the project in that direction? Who was involved? What kind of method do they have used? Things like that, and then we can work together. And of course, these elements are transparent, so you can see what we have done, and you also can learn out of that. Because everyone who had worked with data knows exactly that data science is not something that you just can learn at university. You have really to work with data, and you have to solve real problems with data. Sounds easy, but actually everyone sitting here knows that's sometimes very difficult to do. You don't have the data, you don't know where to find it. It's very difficult to get data, and then also to know what kind of methods are now good practice solving a problem. So that's why this is also an aim that we really strive for, making the world a bit better by showing how we do that, and you can learn also from this. So the aim here is to enable the administration not only to the use of new methods, but also use them in a targeted manner, so really solve real problems. One that is complained with our law and our ethics. Here too, we are not working alone, but on the one hand, in a network within the federal administration. So there are many different administrations working together. It wasn't like that in the past. Maybe COVID helped us a bit. And on the other hand, we're also actively seek cooperation with the research community, so with you. Because we strongly believe that the views you have on data and what kind of problem you can solve are so diverse that cannot only be done just through government or to the administration. For that, it's your task to do. Only from this cross-fertilization can we generate enough mutual know-how to unleash the full power of the combination between more available data and more advanced. However, the main focus of my speech here today is on the data that you receive from us and can be used for your own purpose. Here I don't want to simplify, I don't want just to simple advertise, but also to explain to you why we are actually natural partners. An important point is certainly the strength of statistics, our data literacy. I mean, you all know without data literacy it's quite difficult to solve any problem. Official statistics have been working with data for more than 160 years. I wasn't there at the time, but I mean, you can be sure it exists since then, constantly finding suitable answers to the underlying question of data literacy. What will, can, should, and may we do with data? This focus on the data rather than the technology or administrative tasks also makes us data particularly suitable for research. Why do you say that? Let me explain that in 6 points. First, official statistics works according to scientific standards. I do know that is a difficult definition, because what is a scientific standard? But, for example, we document not only the content of our data through metadata, but also the process by which it was created. So we make it transparent what we do. I mean, this at least should everyone do it. This is a simple principle of doing research. Secondly, it is part of our task to make data comparable over time as well as space, from the local or regional to the international level. This means that our data are designed from the outset to allow both time series as well as spatial comparison, so that you can really compare over time and space. Third, a central part of our task is that our data and results are representative. So using data from the census, for example, we can also provide for you the necessary data to make your own results representative. So you can even test. So for example, you have a sample for something and you don't know if it is representative. We can show you if it is or not. Or we can show you how false it is in spite of representativeness. Fourth, we have an enormous broad thematic experience. The Federal Statistical Office is home to specialists who can either answer your question on practically and subject area and the corresponding data, or help you find the answer. We're one of the only offices you really can call the expert themselves. There is not a press center in between, so you can really talk to people, they work with the data and the same topic as you work as well. Then we work question-oriented. Working scientifically, we are not guided by administrative responsibility for specific data and subject area. Rather, we set out to find the data in a subject area that can be helpful in answering a specific question. We quite often say that our task is, do we really understand the question? And then we look for data. We are the only ones who have the possibility of linking microdata in a division from the requirements of Data Protection Act. This also generates completely new analytic possibilities for you. So we can interconnect, for example, an AHV, is it English? AHV number. So the personal identifiable number you have, we can interconnect that with a representative sample, for example. Of course, we don't show you the personal data, but we can show you that on an aggregated level. So you can send it to us, the question, and we give you back the results. Finally, as you will have noticed by now, we are working directly on the implementation of the FAIR principles, which is so central to research and its handling of data. An example, making data findable, accessible under certain conditions, interoperable, and ultimately also, of course, reusable. At the end of my talk, I will come to that, what these works on Switzerland's data ecosystem can ultimately do for it in the future. But first, let's get down to the basics. What do we have here for you and what can we do for you? I think it's maybe easier I take off my glasses, I can read it a bit better, so sorry. As you can see on this slide, we have a range of different forms of data and forms of making data available, which you can ideally combine for your purposes. So please use our website to browse through and waste offers of the data and contact us if you have additional questions. And statistical data is certainly the easiest way to work with our offer where only a few restrictions apply. No, it was better when I wear it. But if you need more or finer data, we also provide microdata for science. And I think the easiest thing is if you have a project or you have a question, then don't hesitate to contact someone from the FSO. Here too, we try to come as close as possible to the FAIR principles, but are of course bound by data protection regulation due to the sensitive nature of some of these data. As you can see, we already make such data available for the scientific community hundreds of times a year, naturally secured by appropriate data protection contracts. So it is like that. Sometimes it is not allowed to do something, but we can do it for you. So you can ask us and we do a contract with you and then we do it for you. So actually simple like that. Sometimes I'm a bit surprised. Actually, this is a service which is almost paradise for research. And I'm surprised that it is not used more often. We do quite a lot of them, plus minus, I think 700 a year. So it's around that. And when I hear people talking about that data has to be more accessible, then they take examples not from Switzerland, and they take example, for example, from Finland, FinData. And I have been to FinData, and they do really a magnificent job, but they do not half of them what we do. And it takes 2 years till you get your data. So we do actually more than them, but if I hear in the community of the research community, it's often that they talk more about what you can do in foreign countries than that you can do in Switzerland. Maybe we promote it not so good. That is possible. I come to that a bit later. I want to spot a point called linked data. Linked data are probably even more interesting for you. Here we have the possibility, under certain conditions, to link data from the most diverse sources and areas for science and choose to create completely new foundation for their analysis. Since even more sensitive information can arise from the linking of data, the requirements here are comparatively high. For example, it is usually a prerequisite that you have started a Swiss National Fund project in order to obtain such data. I do know that's difficult, and it's a burden for you to do that. This is like this in the moment, but hopefully in the future we can work a bit on that the burden really lowers, hopefully every year. In addition to providing microdata and our offer in the field of data linkage, it is of course a particular value of the research community if we and the university work together to produce data based on that, are directly tailored to research. I know that's a bit the fact that the Swiss universities, that they're all doing a bit their own way. On one side, that's quite good, but on the other side, if that would be a bit more institutionalized, I would say like that, we could unleash the power of the data we have a lot more than we do that today. But of course, that needs the cooperation also from the universities themselves. And of course, also it needs some resources to develop an institutionalized access to something like that, that is has more efficiency than it has today. As someone older example of the Swiss national cohort, someone maybe know that, which is a long-term population-based multi-purpose cohort research platform. So the current version of the SNC is based on the FSO census data from 1990 and 2000. That were linked to mortality, live births, and immigration records until 2015, and to the register-based census annual structural survey from 2010 onwards till the newest data sets. As you know, actually this register is updated every day. So the SNC enables researchers in a wide range of public health subjects, in particular in combination with other longitudinal or environmental data. It is a fruit of the collaboration of the FSO with the public health institutions in Basel, in Bern, Geneva, Lausanne, and also Zurich. The SNC is founded by the Swiss National Science Foundation. As for 2022, the FSO is responsible for the SNC data. We ensure that the data can be used, linked to other data, and made available to researchers. And so also a scientific advisory board ensures the qualified use of these data. Without additional funding from the SNSF, it is unfortunately without any resources. This is, of course, one of the biggest problems overall. I mean, you also know that everybody's saying they have not enough resources. I know that's a huge problem, but what maybe makes sense is to think a bit, do we have elements that can solve a lot more problems from others if we invest in one specific point, then I would say maybe institutionalized data access makes sense. Another example for the database on economic well-being on the working on retirement age population, so-called VISIR, a project we didn't collaborate with, we did in collaboration with the Federal Social Insurance Office, FSIO, where we have collected cantonal tax data from 11 cantons, harmonized them, and linked them to several other data suppliers by the FSO. So the Central Compensation Office and the State Secretary of Economy Affairs did that together, so the SECO and the CCO. So the aim was to foster research on the economic well-being of certain population groups like employees, pension recipients, widows, and as well as broadening the scope of future analysis thanks to the linkage of additional data sources like unemployment statistics, social assistance statistics, the population registers, and structural services. These are the 5 topics we also do for the census. In the agreement of the use of data with the tax authorities, we have tried and partly succeed in being able to transmit the data for research purpose as well. This is a particularly important aspect in the case of tax data. As you know, tax data is a bit sensible, and it's always difficult to get these data. So it was a huge success that 11 cantons were saying, okay, let's do that, and we also made it accessible for research. That was far from easy to negotiate, but made it possible that data could also be used for different research projects. So you see, it sometimes takes a bit time, but where there is a will and we have cantons that cooperate with us, we are also able to give you the data for doing research. There are many other examples, but maybe other examples or topics, for example, in the educational research area. New insights and research questions can be addressed with the educational path and transitions prepared by the FSO and by linking them with additional data from research or business or science. For the Swiss Educational Report, for example, another exciting project with the SNSF and Swiss universities is the establishment of a gender monitoring system for equal opportunities of university professors, or the tracking of the path of postdocs. In 2015, around 2,800 people started a postdoc in Switzerland or began it abroad after receiving a mobility grant from the Swiss National Science Foundation, SNSF. What became out of them? All these examples, I think they show very well that we can create significant added value by working together with research. By sharing knowledge about data analysis, and methods created forms of cooperation and scientific exchange, we can benefit from each other. So the example shows it exemplarily. This is what we have to do a lot more, not only in this field of these 3 examples, but what it needs is, of course, that we have an idea doing that together, and then we coordinate it better than we do it sometimes today. And of course, it needs also that more than only one university participate. It has to be a group helping going on that way. We'll continue to work very successfully with the university and research in many areas and on various topics. An important issue is the early examination of the availability of data for concrete research projects. For research projects that are based on complex linked data, and early exchange about the data situation and the linkage potential is very important. This is why researchers are increasingly approaching us early on before they start a research project to be not confronted with data problems later than losing time or have to adopt the research question. This has proven to be very efficient, especially with submission of the SNSF. More and more often, we already make a statement as part of the research submission. So use it, it's here. This saves us, but not above all of other researchers, a lot of time and efforts. Because sometimes it is really, if you see that someone has thought a long time about a good project, and then he approaches or she approaches us, and then we have to say, look, it's a very good idea, but it's not doable because we don't have the data, or you're not allowed to do it, or you have to formulate it another way, or the methodology is not good, or something like that. And there we'll try to, when you approach us as early as possible, try to show you what is possible and what may not. That sounds very good, but I also have to be a bit honest about it. It takes us to the limit of what is possible sometimes at the FSO. Because we are not having the necessary resources to do more and interact more with research and researchers, which is important and makes sense that the examples mentioned above clearly showed that we should actually do more, but without a better coordination, or also that we are saying we financing elements together so that we have resources and financing elements, it is difficult to scale this. I was mentioning that we do about 700 contracts in that field. And we do that actually without getting any resources doing this. So if someone asks us to help, then these people have to do it beside their actual normal job. So this is a problem for us. Even though we mentioned that several times up to now, we didn't got any resources for that. And this is maybe also a bit the reason why people at the FSO doesn't go out telling anybody what they can do, because they're afraid that then everybody will come. But actually, you know, this is a bit the egg and the chicken question. We have to solve that because the potential is here and we should do it. It helps actually everybody, but it's also clear we need to have resources for that. So this finally brings me to the future and to one of my favorite examples of why we are committed to future developing our offer and our service, especially here in Basel. It is certainly clear to many of you that more and better data is needed for the medical researchers. On the one hand, we are taking about highly specific data on the genome or from imaging procedures. These types of data are not the specific of the FSO. Here we need the network I mentioned of various organizations from the public sector, but also from researchers and universities. In the future, we can make our contribution here by working together with other public actors. I'm certainly thinking of the Federal Office of Public Health, but also of the State Secretary of Education, Research and Innovation. But we also need the other actors such as the SBHN with their specific services. This is something interdisciplinary. There is no one knows everything by themselves. Even when I say we have to coordinate it more centralized, doesn't mean that know-how is centralized. It is just that you have a spot where you can talk from different point of views. But of course, you need the expertise of all of them. There is no one knowing everything. What the FSO can contribute here is, on the one hand, to help further improve the framework condition for research access to these data. For example, by helping to create clear governance for access to public sector data and to standardize the associated processes. And what I already mentioned was the I14Y. We can make data visible, so you can see it at one place. Here we have a mandate to develop a program together with the Federal Office of Public Health to promote the digital transformation of the healthcare system. This also includes improvement in data access for research. But these measures should also be designed by the FSO in such a way that they are having an effect beyond the area of health and are scalable. As you all know, I mean, if you talk about, for example, the data space, there is no clear definition of that, because actually with health, everything has to do with health. And on the other side, if you do look to another data space like mobility, everything has to do something with mobility. So at the end of the day, there are not only data spaces for themselves, so we have to interconnect them. Of course, we have to start with a data space because quite often institutions are built towards a topic. But at the end of the day, the data themselves have to find structures and solutions to topics, not only from topic to data, also from data to topic. But maybe that will be a second step when we have reached the first one, which already will take so long time. I will see what I can reach before I'm retired. Now, coming back to my example, As the Federal Council stated that its healthy policy strategy 2020 to 2030, the goal is of healthy population with the best possible health care is also about keeping an eye on the determination of health status, and improving them further. For example, about 30% of the resident population suffers from high level of noise pollution. And the economic pressure on households is also increasingly sharpening in some cases. In addition to the question on how we can become healthy, which is particularly exciting for medical research, there are equally important questions on how we can remain healthy, or conversely, that makes us ill. To know who is ill is only one part of the story. If you take, for example, the register of cancer, to know who has cancer is not enough. And then also the register himself, they are the people who already having cancer. What is with all the others who never got? So if you have a look like this on that, then you see that the potential that we can take out of the data of these data is a lot more than what we can do today. Individual factors such as the genetic predisposition can contribute to this. But even a predisposition does not mean that a disease has to break out in every case. Rather, there is a complex interaction between predisposition, personal behavior, and external circumstances such as the aforementioned noise pollution or stress caused by the financial difficulties. So maybe we find out that someone gets a sort of cancer because he is not very happy with his job. And that's the higher determination than maybe the precondition you have genetically wise. I mean, just to show you that actually there are many different hypotheses that if we would have data that we can interconnect, that go above only the space of health, we could find out a lot more. This is like a new world of doing analytics. Disease such as cancer require a view that goes far beyond purely medical data. Even with today's possibility, we could go much further when it comes to finding out why, for example, basically comparable people become ill or not, or what influences a wide range of environmental factors having on the accumulation of certain diseases. Here it is our common task to make better information available to politics and society through research. And every one of us is being asked to help on that journey, because there is no one institution can solve that. We have to do that together. But I'd like to go even a bit further in my thinking. I certainly make sense to clarify the influence of very specific environmental factors within the framework of university research. But I hope that at some point in the future, it will be possible combining data linking and machine learning to specifically search for such influencing factors without knowing them beforehand. I know 10 years ago, it was like kind of blasphemic saying something like that, finding out things out of the data without a theory, but that will be possible. This brings me back to my initial remarks on the task of the FSO. We want to continue to improve the possibility of identifying certain relevant data with data management. Working with you, we want to continue to use the strengths of public statistics, and we also want to use data science and artificial intelligence to provide better information to policy and society. And one of the most important things is we want to help each other doing this and make it transparent how we've done it and what came out of that. To do this, we need your cooperation and support, because this is a complex and particularly visionary goal that we can only achieve together. Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, I think we have a fruitful future ahead, of course, and if you could wish for something from you and me, let's start doing this, not just talk about it. Because at the end of the day, we are that what we do and not that what we say that we do. And that's the first point to start. For example, think about how we can better find things by institutionalize the cooperation. And I would be very thankful if you have a discussion somewhere in your peers or in the place where you are, that you ask for questions like this. how we can support the institutionalized possibility to work better together than we do today. It's not possible. It's not that we can do it today, but it's not enough. So please help. Thank you very much.